everyone. Welcome to another presentation as a part of the Berkshire High Peaks Festival. My name is Carolyn Regula, and I will be your host today. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be live streamed on YouTube as well. All of our master classes and lectures will be available to the public after each session on the Close Encounters with Music YouTube channel. Please consider supporting Close Encounters with Music and our ongoing festival. Our mission is to engage the imagination of diverse concert audiences in a welcoming setting, to connect listeners to performers and composers, and foster the excitement and sense of community that live performance builds, to establish a comfortable listening environment, and to turn performances into enriching, educational, and uplifting experiences. I will be including a donation link in the chat, and you can also use your chat window at the bottom of your screen to talk amongst yourselves during today's masterclass. You can also submit questions for our guest instructors using the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. So today, you guys have a 2-for-1 special in Viola land. We have two High Peaks faculty members with us, and I am so excited to introduce them to you both. We have Michael Strauss, who served as the principal violist of the Indianapolis Symphony for 20 years and has served on the faculty of several prominent schools such as Oberlin, Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music, and Philadelphia's University of the Arts. We also have Daniel Panner, who serves as the principal violist of the New York City Opera and is a member of the Mendelssohn String Quartet. He has served on the faculties of Juilliard and the Queens College Conservatory of Music. Currently, Daniel is co-chair of the string department at the Mannes School of Music in New York City. So you're going to hear two of our viola participants tonight. Oh my goodness, had not had coffee. For me, it's more, maybe for you, it's evening somewhere, so I'm sure it works. But I will turn things over to Professors Strauss and Panner, and please enjoy today's masterclass.
Well, Daniel, let me kick us off. Because Daniel, it's night for you, absolutely. Right?
Right. Early evening, yes.
Okay. So today we're going to hear a couple of students from my studio at High Peaks, Christen Hooks, and then later Jasmine Tunac. I am going to introduce, and then I'm pretty much going to leave it to Dan. Dan, I'm only going to talk if you throw it over to me. I'm actually put myself on mute because my students hear me every week, which is fine. And they've prepared these pieces with not a whole lot of preparation from me, and they're looking forward to having experience with you, Daniel. And I'm very excited for them to have this experience. Again, if you need something from me, it's up to you. Toss it to me and I'll come in. Otherwise, muting, enjoying, trying not to make too many facial expressions, and enjoying everything that's going on here. But Christen Hooks, and she's going to play the opening 3 pages of the Bartok Concerto, which is a standard fare to start off audition procedures. This master class, Daniel and I have kind of thought about it as audition prep master class. Okay?
Wonderful.
Hi, Christen.
Nice to meet you, Christen.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. How are you doing? All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it. So, do you want to take it?
Sure.
Okay. Bravo. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Give me a little bit of background on how long you've been working on the piece, your history with it, that kind of thing, just so I have some idea where you are in the process.
Okay, it's brand new. I've only been working on it a couple weeks.
Wow. Well, you're off to a terrific start with it. I'm really impressed. It sounds to me like you've been playing it for much longer, so that's
Oh,
really good.
thank you.
Congratulations. Wonderful. So that's really great. You're going to do wonderfully with this piece. And so what I would like to talk about for the next few minutes is I think you have a great feel for it. And what I would like to explore is maybe making things a little bit more clearly defined so that your musical intentions, which are, I think, all on the money, can come through even more strongly. Because even with the premise that this is kind of an orchestral, we're thinking in maybe with an eye towards preparing this for an orchestral audition. And Mike, please jump in if you have other feelings about this, because you were a principal for so long. I would love to hear your point of view on this. When we're preparing something like, Don Juan or Mendelssohn Scherzo or Mozart 35, of course we want to play musically, but there are certain playing issues that we want to be sure that we're really demonstrating. Seems to me that the concerto is our moment to be able to introduce ourselves as a musician. And it's not like someone's going to be beating time on the table while you're playing the way they might very well in some of the other excerpts. So with that being said, I would love to just go through, and this is, of course, for those who may be watching, who may not know, this is a very typical portion that would be asked for in an audition. Although I will say that if you ever do find yourself going to an audition and they ask for the first movement, um, I would 100% encourage you to be absolutely prepared with the entire first movement. I know there are some orchestras that love to ask beyond this page because many players do assume that's where they're going to stop. And it's a kind of a nasty little weed out thing. So be sure that whatever's on the list, you have the whole thing ready. But typically this is a chunk that's going to be asked for. So going back to the beginning, this opening, what kind of story are you telling here at the beginning in your view? What is this introduction?
Yeah, well, I think it starts off kind of mysteriously, and the rhythm starts on the slower side, and then it keeps getting faster and faster and faster. Um, so I didn't think of a specific story. I was kind of just thinking of like that movement of the rhythm and the motion.
That's very, very good. And I think um, you don't need to think of specific story characters, but already character words like mysterious and gaining momentum are really good. So, given that, I would love to hear a sound at the beginning that sort of creates this atmosphere of I'm about to tell you this strange story a long time ago, something, and what kind of combinations of elements in the bow, in the vibrato, are going to help create that kind of color. So let's start one more time and just experiment with some of that.
Okay.
Okay, good, very good, nice already. Um, in in this first phrase, you have two long notes, right? How do they compare for you? What do you want them to do?
Mm-hmm. I think I think the B natural should decay, like decrescendo to set up the next phrase. So it gives more room to start soft there and build.
Love it. And what about the first one?
The first one, I think it should crescendo into the next beat one.
I agree. And you know, I completely agree with you. If you're doing that now, it's possible I'm not hearing it across the computer. That's very possible. But what are you going to do for example, what are you going to do with your bow speed there to make that happen?
Yeah, so I think it should speed up towards the end.
Yeah, start a little slower, speed up, and you can probably support that with your vibrato. Uh, so that we get that connection up to there. And I like very much the idea of that tapering. I do the bowing that you do. It's difficult to do that on an up bow, to make that taper up.
Yeah.
Oh, I've always done it. I know some people arrange the bowing a little bit differently. By the way, and I don't want to get too deeply into the weeds on this, but you probably know some of the history of this piece, right?
Yeah, a bit.
What do you know about it?
Well, I know that there's many different versions
Yeah,
and
there
that
are. Do you know why?
Yeah, so there's different opinions about different ways of playing it,
Why are
that
there
kind of
different
thing.
versions? Do you know?
Because Bartok passed away.
Right. It's not a finished piece, sadly. It's
Yeah.
terrible, terrible fortune. But we have you seen the manuscript, by the way? It's available online now. You can see it just for free. I think for free. I think legally you can see it for free. But it's certainly available, and it's fascinating to see it. Um,
Oh yeah, I haven't looked at that yet. I'll look that
yeah,
up.
you can grab it. Just if you go to IMSLP, I think it's up there, and I'm pretty sure it's legal to see it. I should make a disclaimer. I'm not positive, but you can certainly get a hold of it one way or another, and it's fascinating to see because so much of what's marked in the part is Surly and Primrose, and God bless them for putting together an edition that works so well. But it is indeed their um, their ideas. It's in their best guess. By the way, not to take too much time, but apparently the story is that Primrose was going to meet with Bartok to finalize things. There were a lot of changes that Primrose wanted to make and a lot of questions he had. He drove into New York City. Bartok was living on West 57th Street, New York City. Have you been to New York City?
Yeah.
Have you driven in New York City? You ever tried to park in New York City?
Oh yeah.
So Primrose was trying to park in New York City for his meeting with Bartok. He couldn't find a parking space, and he was running late. He said, "You know what? I'll reschedule this meeting. I'll do it next week." Unfortunately, there was no next week. Bartok passed away. So we were very close to having a great edition of this piece, but because of New York City parking, it's remained unfinished. But um, so it relates partly to the slurring in that first measure. Um, I think that makes a lot of sense. When we start a piece, we don't want to feel like we're constrained. Actually, in the manuscript, they kind of look all separate, which is interesting. For the sake of playing for an orchestra audition, I wouldn't recommend going too far afield from what is normally played. So in that sense, I think going with the Surly edition is the way to go. But just for your own interest and to sort of inform the way you play things. But if you do want to make this diminuendo, I think saving at the beginning of that will help you not wind up too crunched. Then going on, you're absolutely right. He has written out a kind of a cello-rondo in the rhythm. I mean, it's not a cello-rondo, but the rhythms just get faster. And it suggests maybe a building up of intensity. So what does that suggest about how you want to start that first A flat in terms of
Um.
dynamic?
Oh yeah, it shouldn't be too loud yet.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a way to make it feel like it's sort of like this whole opening. It's like he's got this very small collection of pitches and he's experimenting. Do I want a natural or A flat? Do I want E natural or E flat? B natural or B? It's like he's trying to decide. There's this sense of exploring, of looking for something. So um, he's written it out. I think he really has written it in a very clear way. But the more you can let that guide your approach, I think that will help us. So try this one more time from the beginning with some of those things in mind, making that arch on those long notes, and
Uh-huh.
then beginning this build up maybe from a slightly lower point. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of that I liked a lot more. One just sort of practical thing that to make the build up even more sweeping. I really like the way you start. We have another build up now where we're stuck on these. Nothing, I don't have my part in front of me, I'm sorry, but I don't think anything is marked dynamically. And even if it were, it wouldn't be Bartok's. But it might not be the worst idea to pull back your sound ever so slightly so that, again, you have room to make this repeated pattern develop. This, it's like a whirling dervish kind of quality here. And then we finally break free of it. But if I felt like you, because you had built up nicely, you were already at a place where there wasn't much left for you to do. So I don't want to, I don't want you to drop the pianissimo. It shouldn't be, you don't want us to hit us over the head with it, but just a little something to give yourself some more room. And by the way, I should also mention that these dynamic shapes that I'm suggesting, this is one particular approach. This is a piece that if you listen to many recordings of it, I'm sure you've already noticed, it's all over the place. And this is partly because so much of the guidance from Bartok is not there. So I think that, this is by no means the last word. Mike, please.
Yeah, just I was going to say, I love this idea. I think you're right on to something that that we've been talking about a little bit. But I wouldn't necessarily just go, my whole thing is, one of my things is, when you have repetition, we're either increasing or decreasing tension. I mean, it can go both ways. So here, I don't think you necessarily even need a subtle drop or a sudden drop, but just an idea that I've had, even the past couple of weeks, is to actually make a gradual diminuendo. And because I think it's perfectly fine because of that repetition in the triplets, that it could actually just go subtly over the 2 bars, a diminuendo, into the next build up, and then you can really go for whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it just goes to the idea that as long as you are shaping in response to what is in the music, yeah, you could do it a whole host of different ways, as long as it's clearly reacting to something that is in there. Okay? Great. Now, going ahead. This is a very unusual rhythm that he's written for us on all these B flats, right? And what do you make of it? Why did he write it this way? What effect do we get from that?
I think it gives a bit of push and pull, like not putting them on the beat. It gives like more tension.
Yeah. And the way it exactly, that's right. The way it, unlike maybe a sonata where there's a piano that we can bounce off of, in this particular place, there's not a lot of help from the orchestra to show that. So in order to show that something is syncopated or off the beat in a situation like this, what do you have available to you to show that?
Maybe accent the beginning of each note.
Your sound, the way you start the notes. That you play it in such a way that it feels like an anticipation or a suspension. Something. So that it creates this, I think, very vocal, actually, and I don't think there are a whole lot of, in my opinion, folk music elements in this particular piece. We know that Bartok is all about folk music, this might be one moment where you could imagine this sort of wailing, this kind of feeling. And I think I would love to hear a little bit more of that leading up to that final B flat. And then it's a tiny detail, but the final note of this final B flat, I feel like it's such a big change in register, going from the very top to down. I would love for you to see if you can find a way to get more into the string for that last note and really pull out just a real substantive note. It's fast, but see if you can arrange to be there. One thing that you might try is just play that note just out of context, find that sound, and then see if you can get to it.
Okay.
With that sweep down. See what do you need to do to get a sound. Where do you need, what contact point works? How deeply into the string can it respond? How deeply does it crack? Find out what the limits are. Is a lot of speed good? Is a slower speed good? And then I arrive at an up bow. I think you might arrive at a down bow, just depending what bowing you do, but that doesn't matter. But make sure you do the bowing that you're going to do, just because that will change everything. Great. Just
Dan.
Yeah.
One of the things, Kristen's been studying with me, I don't know, for 5 weeks or so in the summer. But one of the things that we haven't addressed that may be helpful for this is Kristen, her elbow kind of gets behind her rib cage. And she doesn't really follow through. We haven't really worked on this yet. Something I would love to work on. But maybe if you have an idea to encourage the elbow coming around so she can get there to actually make that sound.
It's such an important thing.
I think it would also help with, these whole notes at the beginning that you were talking about. I think one of the reasons why they're not as connective as they could be is because of that. Her elbow kind of gets stuck and she comes up this way instead of this way. If you have any ideas about that, you could cut my time with her in half, maybe.
Do two simple exercises that leap to mind. Because this is something I see it all the time. And I see it in my own playing when I'm trying to play in the lower half, feeling less free in the upper arm and elbow, because that's so important. One very simple exercise that I love is to place the bow on the string first at the middle, and then I just rock my bow from bout to bout. So past the C string, past the A string.
Oh.
And I want to feel like I'm flapping a wing, And I'm moving, my elbow is moving, but it requires the back of my shoulder to be totally free in order for that to happen. And then, in a way, it's easiest at the middle. I'll try it then at the tip, where you won't be able to go bout to bout, but you can still have that sense of, you feel it's different, and you feel more of that extension. You can try it at the frog, where now you're leading more with the elbow. And you want to feel exactly. That's one very quick, simple warm-up. Another...
If I could, because you're doing it great, Dan, but Chris, you do it when you go, happening is your elbow is getting lower than your wrist when you're on the A string, and you need to
want to keep them together.
Keep it in the same level.
I agree.
Because it's very hard to fight uphill to get that elbow back to the level of your wrist, but you can see it even now on the screen. Your elbow is below your wrist.
So here.
There you go.
That's good.
Here. Okay.
That's good.
Everywhere, even at the bottom.
Right. That's
go.
Right. That's great. Another, just two other quick exercises for getting that elbow a little bit more free. Hold your bow at the balance point, just above your frog, and then play to the frog, to the actual frog. This is very difficult to do, and it'll feel very uncomfortable. Right. So you can get in the habit of, it's exaggerated. It's doing more than you're going to want to do. But then when you hold the bow normally, it'll feel a lot easier.
Okay.
All right. And the last thing that's just a good way to warm up, I think, is to place your bow on the string at the frog. And you want to, it's best if you can do it in a mirror, in front of a mirror, so you can see, and when I say frog, I mean where the hair meets the metal part.
Mm-hmm.
Really the frog, not like where your finger, not where your index finger is, but below it. So, and you want to check everything. Is your shoulder relaxed? Is your elbow, is your upper arm at a good level for whichever string you're on? Are your fingers comfortable on the stick? Could you tap? You couldn't tap your pinky here because it's supporting your bow, but you could tap the others. Is your thumb relaxed? Just check those things. And then, you just sort of stay there for a second, feeling as free and comfortable as you can. And then you maybe take a little hop through the air and you go about a quarter of the way down the bow. And you do the same thing. You check. And everything's going to be a little different now, right? The balance of your hands can be slightly different. The relationship between the height of your wrist can be a little bit different compared to what it was at the frog. You still want your shoulder to feel relaxed. After you check all that, you go to the middle. And again, do you have a nice, you have your sort of your square point? Is your bow parallel to the bridge? Is your upper arm parallel to your bow? Are your fingers comfortable? You always want to just keep tapping your fingers to make sure they're comfortable and free. You're never, too tight. The thumb, you'll notice the thumb feels different now. There's a little bit more counter pressure in the thumb compared to the way it was at the frog. Another quarter of the way down the bow. And again, everything relaxed. Is your shoulder relaxed? Are you opening your elbow? Are you feeling the elbow open? And back to the tip. And then you could just go back. Now, I'm talking through it, so it's taking longer. But if you do this, it might take you 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And it's just a way to sort of, you get a snapshot of the way things are going to feel at every part of the bow. And then when you're playing, you can every once in a while check in and say, oh, when I did that little snapshot, my shoulder kind of was just like this and my elbow was swinging across. But now my shoulder's like this. So that's telling you that that's not what you're going for. And then you can sort of figure out where that's coming off track.
Okay. And are there ever times when you would play with a lower elbow or never?
Well, I think the elbow, the height of the elbow is going to differ depending on what string you're on, of course, right?
Yeah.
On the C string, it's got to be pretty high. And on the A string, it's going to be lower, right? But I would, let me put it this way. I don't know, you never say never, because I'm sure there's something that could, but we want to be able to feel like the basic bow arm motion is a swinging of a pendulum from our shoulder. And so if you experiment for yourself and put your elbow really high up, you find you can't really move. If you put your elbow really low down, you find you can't really move.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is almost always somewhere in between the extremes. So I find that if there's sort of no daylight between the upper arm and the side, that's usually not going to be a mobile way of standing. You want to feel like you can have that kind of swing all the time. Okay? So yeah, but it's always going to change, and it really depends on where you are in the bow and which string you're on, and um,
There, to answer the question, would you ever play with a low elbow? I would almost answer the question with another question as why would you want to? I mean, what benefit is there of that? And,
Okay.
and if there's a benefit for it, then yeah, I mean, I can imagine like doing something like Satie or some very, we talked about your Ravel, the beginning of the Ravel, this. So maybe if you're in the context of playing it and you're in Suite 2 and you had a Beethoven symphony in the beginning of the program and blah, 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 blah. Something like this, if you were playing far enough out, if you wanted to get this ethereal sound, maybe you drop the elbow. Just get that kind of a sound out of it. So it's a possibility, but you have to ask I think you have to ask the question, why? What benefit? And for me, if maybe or Dan possibly playing at the end of the Tannhäuser, you've been playing for 3 hours, and you've got some ethereal thing that Wagner wrote at the end of the opera, and you're just frankly tired, and you need to know how to play. Maybe you're putting your elbow on your knee, which sometimes happen in operas, and you're playing in the upper strings. Or you're playing a tremolando or something like that. Sure. Then knowing how to play with that technique is a benefit because you can save yourself physically. That's why. But if you're playing at the beginning of an audition, the Bartók Viola Concerto, I can't imagine a reason why you would want to drop your elbow.
One thing that sometimes people, I think, is a misconception is we talk a lot about getting the weight of the arm into the string.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that misleads people into thinking that they want to do that.
It's an old English pedagogy. I know where it comes from. It's kind of like the Tertis school of that pedagogy.
But I agree. If the elbow is below the level of the bow, then that weight is actually not going into the bow. It's kind of being wasted. So we do want to feel like we want to be doing two things at once. We want to let the arm rest in the string, but we also need to support it. It's both. So
pedagogy. Primrose came out of that English pedagogy, and he actually taught the lower elbow for a while, but towards the end of his life, he got away from that.
Yeah. I think as a good rule of thumb, if you can think of, like, if you imagine sort of laying down a piece of plexiglass over your bow and your arm, it shouldn't tilt down. Your upper arm should be across from your bow. Mm-hmm. That's a kind of an easy rule of thumb, and if you have that going on, whichever string you're on, you'll probably be okay.
Okay.
Now, just we actually don't have all that much time left, but the way this opening, sort of, let's call it the exposition of the Bartók, is structured. We have this opening material 4 times. Right? It seems to be that one way that you could organize your approach that might make for a slightly more, where you're sort of bringing me along a little bit more to a story, is to decide how you want each of those 4 statements to compare. Right? They're different registers. They are followed by different things. The context is different. But I didn't notice maybe as much of a development of that idea as I would have liked to hear. Even just to start, the sort of this mysterious, haunting opening compared to the second statement in this warmer register, to hear a real difference there. And then maybe something that's more we sort of see where we're going a little bit more, and then finally more triumphant. Finally, we get to that. Yeah. Now, I just want to talk for a moment about. I just want to say, I'm so impressed that this piece is so new to you. I really would not have thought so. And you're dealing with a lot of the challenges so well already. One thing that I would encourage you on the second page, where there are all these sort of hoops to jump through. It's very easy to become preoccupied with the difficulty of those things, and I'm not going to lie to you, they are difficult. And but if you could also, even at this early stage, think more about, first of all, the timing of them and how you want to shape them, I think it will help you a lot down the line. It's very easy when we work on things like this to kind of drill. We learn it a certain way. I've certainly done this plenty of times. And then, as we get to know the piece better, we think, oh, actually, I kind of want to place that, or I want to have a little, but my hands have already learned it a different way. And at that point, I can't, then you have to kind of relearn it. So in a sense, it's a waste of time. So I was thinking one place that I was thinking about this. There's so much back and forth, and I think that it's without distorting the time, there can be a little bit more of the different voices and the, you have to do this, by the way, looking at the piano part, so you know exactly where you are bound by certain things and where you're not, because there are a couple of places where you're not, and you can wait a moment. That's a place where you can place that. Just the very, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to go right away. Now, again, I'm not saying add a rest. Don't distort the rhythm. But it is, I think, a big rhetorical moment. So that and if you have that feeling of, bah, I think it's also going to help you technically, because it'll make you feel a little bit more grounded when you get there instead of kind of falling into it.
Yeah.
Then, okay, so we get to this poco meno mosso. Different material finally, right? It's another section. Okay, so maybe start that for me, okay? Can you start right on?
Okay.
Good. Okay, so obviously it's very different from the material of the beginning. What is, in your opinion, just for you, what is the nature of this place? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's very agitated and busy.
Yes. Now, let's see if we can delve into that even a little bit more. It is definitely agitated and busy.
Yeah.
How are these things moving up? What intervals is he using to move up?
Whole steps.
Maybe even half steps. It's kind of creeping up. And then, what does he do?
And then he jumps up to a B flat.
And emotionally, what is that? Like, is that a continuation of what we've been doing?
It's more of an interruption, I guess.
An outburst, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it seems to me, because we have all these half steps, it's rising, but so with so much resistance, it builds up incredible tension. And then there's this enough. I heard years ago, I haven't been able to get it out of my head, so now I'll give it to you. I hope you don't mind. I heard a class by a guy in the Vienna Philharmonic, and he said, for him, this passage, it's like a horror movie where somebody's trapped in a pit that's filling with snakes. And it's just... and then he throws them off. And I think there has to be this sense of like menace, kind of, and then we have a back and forth, a dialogue. When I play these three notes, and then this one, how are they different? How do they relate to each other? How does this relate to that? Harmonically.
Yeah. Well, the first three notes have the open G on the bottom, and then you go up to the G sharp.
Absolutely. And even more generally speaking, which one is more tense? Which one is more resolved?
Oh, the G sharp is going to be more tense.
Is it?
Oh, actually.
The seventh has got to be tense. The seventh has got to be tense.
I think we have the relationship that I'm looking for is one of tension and resolution. Now, let me just say one thing about playing a piece like this. And as a viola player, so much of our repertoire, we have an extra responsibility. Every musician has the responsibility to convey the piece to their audience. But if you're playing the Brahms Violin Concerto, in a way that's a little, I mean, it's a huge responsibility, but the language is one that the listener is probably more familiar with. They've probably heard the piece a lot. Chances are, if you're playing a viola recital, someone in your audience has never heard most of the pieces you're playing before, unless all of your audience is violists. Even then, they may not know some of the stuff you're playing. And you may think, well, in an orchestra audition, that won't be the case. Not true, because some people on the committee are not going to be viola players, and they will not know all the repertoire that you're playing. I mean, I'm sure it's different in every orchestra, but for sure, in many orchestras, that's the case. So we can't assume that it's going to be obvious to people that we have a sense of tension. If you really feel it as being a dissonance and a resolution, then they will hear it. And I say it's extra tricky with a lot of our repertoire because it's not always written in the language of the 19th century. Most of our repertoire is not. But Bartók is a kind of a funny hybrid, because even though he was not writing, obviously, in a strictly tonal manner, concepts of tension and resolution still govern his music. And so that's why it's mysterious at the beginning when we're hovering between A and A flat and E flat, because those pitches still have that kind of pull for him in a way that maybe they didn't for Schoenberg. In Schoenberg, it was a little bit different system. But for Bartók, he's still a tritone in Bartók is still a tritone. It's still a tense interval. And so we want to make sure that as we're playing this passage that, again, you're doing a great job learning it. And I think that you can just make sure that you let the shape and the harmonic tension and the story infuse your approach even now so that you're not forced to then sort of add the music on at the end. Because when we try to, and intuitively we think, well, I have to learn the notes first and then I can worry about the music. In my opinion, that often leads to a lot of wasted time and bad habits that it's really hard to break. Because we may find that it's just, we have a different feeling about it when we come out of it. So I'm sorry I didn't really let you play all that much. But Mike, please.
One last thing, just to double back on the whole this ladder at the Poco Meno Mosso, Christen. You identified as whole steps. Those are the individual steps that, but the and it may be the steps that you're walking, but the grade is half steps. Going in a half step grade, and you have to get this set in your mind with this particular section because you've got it turned around.
Yeah, I just can't seem to get it in tune.
No, you have the pattern incorrect.
Okay.
You have it upside down. You have to look at it as two separate entities. You've got steps. Those are whole steps. But you've got a grade in your trajectory. That's half steps. Daniel's absolutely correct.
It's like he's taking an idea and he's transposing that idea. It's like Warhol taking a soup can and painting it all different colors, but it's the same soup can going up and up and up and up.
Yeah. Good. Excellent.
Really, congratulations. I really thank you for playing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the help.
Yeah, Christen has to go because she has to teach herself, or she's got some sort of a presentation at noon. So don't be
all right.
Leaving, but she needs to skip.
I understand. It's good. And have a good presentation.
Daniel. Thank you.
Okay.
Nice
Thank
meeting you.
Thanks again.
Pleasure.
Okay, we're ready for Jasmine. we're also helpless.
Hello.
Oh, there she is.
Hello, Jasmine.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So you're playing some extras today, I understand?
Yeah, I have the Prelude to Bach 2, and then I have an excerpt to Beethoven 5.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I think whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
And why don't you play both pieces and then we'll talk at the end, okay?
Okay.
Bravo. Very nicely done. Really, really good. Let me ask you also, give me some idea how long you've been working on both of these pieces?
I worked on the prelude to this to Bach 2 a while ago, and I picked it back up maybe about a week ago.
Oh,
And then the excerpts I've had for a couple months.
okay. Very good, very good. So, these are very different pieces, of course. And, but one sort of topic that maybe we could use to guide our discussion that I think would be helpful for you to keep thinking about in both is the general idea of sound and what kind of sound you want for the piece that you're playing. One of the challenges of preparing an orchestral audition list is in very, very short order, going from one sound world to another, from Strauss to Mozart to Beethoven to Bartók to, and in this case, Bach, and really presenting a convincing vision for the sound of whatever piece it is you're playing. And that's really one of the hardest things, to be able to switch so quickly. And that's, of course, it's a crucial skill to have to play in an orchestra, but it's hard. And so, as a start, one thing that I would be interested in working on with you a little bit is sort of defining your sound for both of these pieces a little bit more specifically, so that they really, if I were to sort of drop into the middle of either of those pieces, I could guess what, at least if not the exact composer, what era I was listening to. Now, we could probably talk for about an hour and a half about the general idea of playing Bach, and particularly playing Bach in an orchestra audition. Because as I'm sure you know, you don't need me to tell you that everybody has their own idea about how to play Bach. And it's the old joke, you ask two people and you get three opinions. So it's not a question, I think, of trying to please everyone on the committee, because that's impossible. Everyone's going to have their own point of view on what is the right way to play Bach. What I think you want to do is find something that you find persuasive, that you believe in, and convey that with as much clarity as possible. Okay? Now, I am going to make suggestions based on my own perspective on Bach, and it's something that is, it's changed a lot over the years, and it's, I hope, still changing, but I do, that's sort of where I'm coming from, and you can sort of take a lot of this and throw it away as well, right away, okay? So, a few things in Bach that I think can be helpful to think about is we want, I think, to create a kind of resonance in our sound that is really bringing out the natural resonance of our instrument whenever we can. Bach was a master at writing these pieces in a way that sort of maximize the resonance of the instrument. You start with, 2 out of the 3 first notes you play are in unison with open strings, or you might start with an open string, which I think is perfectly fine to do. And so it's set up in a way to let you find the most ring possible. All music we want to have resonate, but the kind of resonance we have in this Bach is, for example, going to be very different from the kind of resonance that you want in the opening of the Beethoven. So one thing that I would encourage you to keep exploring is using your bow in such a way in the Bach that you're looking for how you can get the most ring out of the instrument without ever feeling like you are forcing or pressing. Now, I'm not saying that I want you to play like a Baroque performance specialist or you should use a Baroque bow in your audition. I don't think that. I don't think that would be a good idea. But I think for my taste, I wanted to hear, in general, more sense of letting the notes breathe after you started them, so that that there was more of a kind of air in the sound. Doesn't mean flautando. It just means letting it breathe after you start. That's one thing about the Bach. Another thing about the Bach, for me, is as you probably know, I don't know what edition you're playing off of, and it doesn't matter, but if you look at any of the manuscripts, and you, as you probably know, there is no manuscript in Bach's own handwriting, but any of the manuscripts that you look at, you'll see that there are essentially no dynamics, right? But that does not, I think, at all mean that we want to play without dynamics. It means that the job of coming up with a dynamic scheme is very much ours. We have to make those choices ourselves. And one general thing, and it's hard to judge these things over Zoom, but in a way, it's kind of good because, yes, Haley, it's fine. In a way, it's kind of good because, oh, is that a manuscript you're holding up there?
I got them all.
In a way, it's good you have to exaggerate over Zoom because when you're in a hall, you're also going to exaggerate in a way that's sort of similar. So as you were playing, one thing that was not clear to me a lot of the time was where you wanted, for example, a low point to be and where the high points would be. Sometimes it was clear, but I don't know if, for example, if you have gone through and decided for yourself what you want your general dynamic shape to be. Have you done that?
Yeah, I have. I think I just wasn't exaggerating doing everything.
Right. And that's the kind of thing that when we're, under pressure, things can start to even out a little bit because we want a good sound all the time. And so it starts to. So I think in particular, when you have low points, it would be good to show that very clearly. And maybe we can just play a little bit of start from the beginning, and we can experiment with making some of those things a little bit more clear. The other thing just to mention, and this is something that not everyone would agree with. When Bach was writing, let me put it this way. I think for most of us, if we think about the elements of music, what's the most important element of music? I think for many people, they would say, well, if you ask somebody, what are some things that make up music? They would say melody, right? Does that make a reasonable answer?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you went on, some other elements might come up with in music that are important?
Rhythm.
Yes.
Dynamics.
Okay. What else?
I
don't want to put you on the spot. What happens when you have melody that you layer in layers?
Oh, harmonies?
Yes, harmony. So for most of us, I think for most people, if I haven't done a survey, but I think if you ask most people, the number one answer they would come up with is melody. When Bach was writing, the number one answer that he would have come up with, I'm pretty sure, is harmony. Melody would have been way down on the list. In fact, you can see, you know what, at the end of the piece, you do something very interesting. You you take those chords and you embellish them, which I think is great, right? But you see in your music, probably they're just written as chords, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And I think you're 100% right. I think Bach expected the player to fill that in. But think about that for a second. What he's saying is the melody is so unimportant. I'm not even going to bother to write that out. I'm telling you what harmonies to play, and then you decide what you want to do for the melody. It's kind of an amazing thing when you think about it. And there are many Baroque pieces that when you look at them, they are written just as chords like that. And the performer was expected to connect those chords with different embellishments. Wouldn't even call it a melody. But so what I'm getting at is it's very difficult for us with our training, our background, our thinking of pieces as being, tunes, melodies, to not approach things in a melodic way. I would encourage you to, as you're going through this, start to look at this piece more as harmonies, chords. That then he's written out embellishments. And then he has another chord. And he's written out a lot of embellishments. But what does it mean to not play something melodically? It means not to play every note equally beautifully. We're trained to play things beautifully, and it may seem weird that I'm telling you, don't play so beautifully, but some notes in a harmony are very important in showing us what that harmony is. Others kind of fill them in. And if you can get in the habit of deciding where the notes are, which notes are really, you might say, structurally important, giving those more beautiful sound, more emphasis, maybe even more time, and the other notes that are more connective tissue, more filling things in, those you might play with a different kind of sound. So another general thing that I would have loved to hear was just more differentiation in your sound between them. So let's start again, and maybe you can just experiment with that a little bit. So we're looking for more clear dynamic contour and more variety in the sound. Michael, yes?
I just wanted to confirm with you, Dan. I just did a quick survey of the Baron editions that are involved about dynamics. A very interesting thing, the prelude of the D minor suite was written with no dynamic. There is not one copy save one. It was an anonymous German manuscript that was thought to possibly have been sold for public consumption in the late 18th century, before the first official publication for the Paris 1824 publication. The only dynamic in the prelude was after the fermata. There was a piano written after the fermata in that one edition that was ignored by the Paris edition. So you are correct. Let's think harmonically. Let's not worry about the dynamic. There's virtually nothing in the D minor suite.
So why don't you start, and we'll just, we won't have time to we won't have time to go through the whole thing, but just see if we can get some ideas and experiment a little bit.
Okay.
I'm just going to stop you to ask you a couple of questions, okay? In the first measure, what do you think is the job of the last three notes of the bar? What's their function?
To connect the first and second
To
chord.
bring us into the next bar, right? Let me ask you this. Suppose he hadn't written that. Would it have been a catastrophe? Would you understand that? I think you would, right?
Yeah.
So, in a sense, could you try something for me once? Could you play what I just played? Don't play those three notes. Introduce that harmony. Then play a different harmony. Try that. Good. Let me ask you, Jasmine. Of those two harmonies, which one is more calm? Which one has a little more tension?
Oh, the first one's more calm and the second one has more tension.
Can you show me that in your sound?
Do the same thing.
Please. Nice. Now, I would like you to improvise something to get from the first bar to the second bar. My suggestion would be, but I want you to make that up. You know what I mean? I'm kind of kidding. I want you to play those notes, but as if you were improvising it, okay? Try. Yes, yes. So I'm already now starting to get a sense that you are playing that you're exploring these harmonies. And the best thing to do is the more you listen and decide for yourself answers to questions like which is more calm, which has more anxiety. What about the third one? Does it have more anxiety than the second one? What about the fourth one? Does it have whatever it is? And you're not going to go to crazy in the first four bars, but you definitely want to show that these chords are not the same. It might be something as small as, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." I didn't scream one and whisper the other, but I said those two things in a different intonation. If I said them in the same intonation, it would be slightly strange, right? And this is the same thing. It's just they have a slightly different feel. And as you're practicing, a lot of our practice of this music is just deciding, okay, so what is the harmony in this bar? How does it feel to me? And how does it compare to what came right before it and what it's leading to? And then if there's a harmonic progression, which there always is, what's the goal of it? Okay? So, that would be sort of my overall suggestion for this, because you play the notes very beautifully, your intonation is excellent, and I think you have a good feeling for the piece. But I want you again to explore thinking of this as the way harmonies connect, like a harmonic story, and not a melody. Because in a certain sense, it's really not, which is a weird thing for us to try to deal with. Because we see notes going like that, we think, well, that's a melody. But I would encourage you to explore thinking of it differently. Also, other elements, the way that he writes these, the rhythm, we haven't talked about rhythm much at all, but it's interesting the way he writes the rhythm at the beginning. We have long note, longish note, but shorter. What does that do to the music? There's this sort of built-in accelerando, which I think supports the harmonic tension increasing that you already mentioned to me. So again, you can use those elements. I'm not asking you to distort the music or do anything that's not there, but just sort of react to those elements in the music and show me in your sound what they're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Michael, before we leave the Bach, you know, there are so many, as I said, so many different approaches to Bach. And I always wonder when I see it on a list in an orchestra, because I would have to think that even the members of the orchestra would have really strong views about how to play it. What would you suggest to somebody preparing Bach for an orchestral audition in terms of how much do you allow yourself to be influenced by performance practice and things like that?
So that's a great topic. I always go back to studying with our teacher, Karen Tuttle. Karen would sit like this, exactly how I'm sitting. I'm sure she did in your lessons too. And she would say, you know, honey, I have to tell you, I think Bach was the first jazz composer. And what she was getting at was that Bach is a gateway for all of us to show what we have in our hearts as far as what we think about music. It's a voice. The reason why we all play Bach, and maybe even the reason why so many musicians after Bach in Germany were named Bach, even though there wasn't their name, Bach was used as a label, was because it's a gateway for us to be musicians. It's a gateway for us to explore our own musicianship. And I think the reason why Bach is asked universally on auditions, not only with orchestra auditions, but pretty much if you want to get into any school, pretty much if you want to get any degree, pretty much if you want to audition for any kind of thing, you're asked to play some Bach. It's not a test, it's an identifier. So I think when you prepare Bach for an audition or any kind of performance, it's really a look inward, and it's a chance for you to tell your own story.
I love that. That's a great way to.
And I would never prepare Bach for somebody else. I would only prepare Bach for myself.
That's great. That's great advice. Yeah.
No? It tells us where we are, and you shouldn't feel insecure about where you are, Jasmine, because everyone has a different path. I think Daniel's comments to you are right on the money. We've talked about a few of them. In fact, when Jasmine brought this piece back, I brought out the big book of knowledge, and we went through every single harmonic note that had some discrepancy, and together we made a choice about which notes Jasmine wanted, what felt good for her. Fortunately, in the D minor prelude, there are not a huge amount of differences, so it didn't take more than one half of a lesson to go through it. But it can be quite time consuming, the other suites, because we don't have Bach's hand yet.
To do a lot of detective.
I'm still hoping. I think it's like the Holy Grail, or the what is the thing they put the Ten Commandments in?
Yes, the Ark, right.
The Ark of the Covenant. The Bach Pillow Suites are the Ark of the Covenant for me.
It's got to be in somebody's attic in Schwungen, right? It's got to be someplace.
Exactly right. I would hope that Bach's wife took them from the way that she was treated at the end of her life. I hope she took them and buried them somewhere. Screw you all back. It would only be fitting. But that being said, hopefully someday we'll be answer a lot of questions. But in the meantime, since there's something charming and fascinating and beautiful about there not being a manuscript.
Right.
it kind of opens the door like everything else.
Yes,
Um,
possibilities.
the one thing that I want to add before we move on from the Bach is that a lot of the things that Daniel is talking about, the entire master class, is the sense of perdendo, which we should get from someone who plays in an opera orchestra like Daniel does. And this is the kind of speaking voice, the vocal quality, the cadence in the voice. This is what we want when we listen to someone performing. The human voice. After all, if we go back to the very beginning, the reason why we have instruments in the first place, of any kind, is because we're trying to mimic the human voice. So I think what Daniel is talking about with getting back to the voice, very important for you. Jasmine sometimes struggles, if I may say, separating herself from the mechanical aspect of the instrument. But all of this that Daniel is talking
I've never heard of anyone having that experience. I'm kidding. We all have that experience.
We all fight through it. We all go through this, Jasmine. And we all come back to it. It haunts us. But we're all trying to explore the instrument as our voice. And I want you to feel more breath, more oxygen getting into what you're doing. And it's especially going to come up in the Beethoven. But maybe we should hear you play a little bit of Bach with everything that Daniel and I have tried to fill your head with over the past weeks. Just maybe a little more sense of repose and human expression coming to you through the harmony.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. Much more personal. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Good,
I
Jasmine.
think it's very much on the right track. Can I just offer one more small practice technique that I find personally very helpful when I'm working on Bach? Take a section, maybe it can be 4 or 5 lines. Try playing in tempo. Play only the note on each quarter note. Leave out the other 3/16 notes. What that will do is it will show you often the skeleton of the music, the harmony, how it moves. It will help you make decisions about how you want to connect things. And it will also make you miss those notes. And then when you play them, you'll treat them differently. But they'll feel, in a way, it will feel more, I think, spontaneous a lot of the time without changing the tempo, without changing the rhythm. But it's a good way to sort of just, it's almost like you buy a table at a garage sale that's covered with paint. You strip everything off, see what's there, and then you figure out how you want to decorate it. And in a way, this is a way you can kind of pare it down to its simplest, and then you fill it back in. But already you're on a very, very good track.
So, Daniel, which notes do you pick? Because you blipped for a second.
Oh, the notes that are on each quarter note.
Right.
So,
The first note of each beat.
exactly. Because typically that's where you're going to find either the new harmony or it might stay the same. But the notes that are within the beats very often are going to be passing notes or neighbor notes, or less, they're going to be notes that serve a different function. And it'll show you how these but it'll show you how these things are really organized. And then I think you'll feel them very different once you add the rest of the notes back in, I think.
Okay.
Try it. Just don't do the whole thing at once. Take, as I say, 4 or 5 lines and do it a few times, and then add the other notes back and see how it feels. But before we run out of time, I would like to talk just a little bit about the Beethoven. Have you played this piece in the orchestra by any chance?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, someday you'll have a chance. That's right. So, this opening, it's always helpful when we prepare an excerpt. One thing that I would always suggest is you want to have an idea of how our part fits into the whole, right? And you can get an idea of that by, the best thing is to be able to play the piece, but that's not always easy to arrange. Having access to the score, and these days that's so much easier than it used to be. Listening to a variety of recordings, so you see how things fit together. But the highest praise that I have heard for people's orchestral excerpts, I've heard more than one committee member say this to me, is when I heard that person playing their excerpt, I heard the whole orchestra around them. And that's really what we want to try to kind of convey to the committees, that we're part of the whole orchestra. We hear everything around us. In this case, in the opening of the Beethoven, do you happen to know who else is playing here at the beginning?
The cellist?
Yeah, wonderful. So we have very good. I'm A plus. So you get this. He starts us off with exactly. He starts us off with this, almost like it's like a chorus of men's voices. I don't know if you've ever listened to like a Russian chorus or something like that. It's an amazing sound, And so even when it's soft, and it's marked piano here, piano dolce, there is this incredible warmth to what we're trying to convey. Not about being loud, but this beautiful sort of golden burnished sound that we want to try to capture. So I wonder if you might just play this opening one more time and see if you can hear around you the cellos, the rest of the viola section. This just incredible, heartfelt, and again, it ties in so well with what Michael was making explicit. It's singing. This is such a singing opening. Okay? Let's try. Jasmine, I'm just because we're running out of time, I'm going to stop you for a second. One thing that I always suggest in preparing excerpts. Have you taken any orchestral auditions yet? I have no idea how old you are, where you.
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, you will, and you know, it's a situation where we're going to feel a lot of adrenaline for sure, right? There's going to be a lot of excitement. One thing that I think is a very useful thing to get in the habit of doing is with every excerpt, you want to come up with what I would call kind of a choreography to how you start it. Because when you walk out on stage and you're about to start something, you don't want to think at that moment, oh, where do I want to be in the bow for this? Do I want to breathe in or breathe out? You don't want to think anything like that when you're in the moment. You want to have done it enough times that the routine is exactly that. A routine that becomes automatic. For me, for this particular excerpt, part of my own choreography, aside from the sort of physicality of feeling like I'm grounded, like I'm really comfortable on both feet, and my viola is comfortably supporting my bow, and knowing how I'm going to breathe before I start, is I want to fill my head with that lower string sound before I begin. I want to hear that sound before I start. My watching you, I feel like you're starting a little quickly. You're not quite ready before you begin. And especially when we're, you're being watched, you're being criticized by a stranger, and it's not a comfortable thing to do. But in any situation like that, time goes faster than we think. So if you get in the habit of stabilizing yourself and hearing this chorale kind of, oh, maybe counting off 5 beats, 1, 2, 3, 5, then you'll be in the flow of the sound and the time that you want before you begin, and you're much more likely to have an initial sound that is what you want to represent. And these excerpts are so short, the initial sound is really important because that first impression, it's a big percentage of what we're going to be offering the committee. So just for now, I want you to experiment with, not out loud like I just did, but inside your head. I want you to try singing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe the way I did along with 4, 5. 1, okay? Give that a try. Now let me ask you, did the sound that you produced, did it match what you wanted in your head?
Maybe like 40%. I need to do it again.
Oh, that's not good enough.
So let's think very specifically about what it was that didn't meet your own ideal and what we could do to change it. What did you not like?
I still, even though I felt like before I started playing, I was starting a little bit slower. When I started playing, I realized that I didn't.
Okay, so you mean your tempo?
Really quick.
And also, it seems to me that your initial sound doesn't always speak right away. And again, if we were singing, even if we're singing quietly, oh, oh, maybe you can think about a sort of soft consonant like a D or a B. And that also experimenting with where you're placing your bow, how deeply into the string you get. Now, I don't want to, we don't have time to go through every little detail, but the fact is, as you probably know, one thing that's nice about the instrument is that it's extremely honest. It doesn't do anything to make us feel good, and it doesn't do anything to make us feel bad. It reacts to what we do. So if there's a sound that you're not happy with, all you have to do is change something, which may sound thunderingly obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people do not do that. They keep trying over and over again, hoping it will sound better. Instead, ask yourself what I just asked you. What did I like about it? What did I not like about it? Okay, if I didn't like, let's say I didn't like that it doesn't start directly, maybe I need a little more weight. Maybe I need a little bit closer to the bridge. Maybe I need a little bit more catch. And then you experiment. Some things are going to work, some things are not. But it's always going to change it. And then you decide, did I like that change? What about that change where I want to revise? And so we're starting with a musical ideal. You're starting with that sound you have in your head, that image of that beautiful golden lower string sound. Then you're listening to what you produce, deciding how close is that to what I want, and then make adjustments, and then you try again. That's practicing.
Could I try one thing with Jasmine on that? Just on that. Could you try one time, Jasmine, starting this excerpt, the first one, and I want you to forget about your instruments. I want you to actually forget about your left hand, your right hand. I mean, I want you to think about the left hand and right hand, but I don't want you to think about it with the instrument in your hand or the bow in your hand. I want you to think about the left and right hand being absolutely connected to your voice. No wood. Okay? Mm-hmm. And try to empty your mind of the technical things that I know are kind of going through them. Okay? And just think no wood, and play one more time. Just this first excerpt. The whole thing. Don't judge yourself. Just let this happen, and let's see what happens. Bellissima. Molto bene.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So why did that happen? That's the question. Why is it easier when we get rid of the barrier of the wood, the instrument, the bow in our hands? Why is that easier for you? I don't think you have to answer the question at all. But the one thing we have to think about is how much can we incorporate this instrument that Daniel so beautifully talked about? How much can we incorporate that instrument into us? And how can we blend with the equipment? How can we not think of it as equipment?
Right. And I think that's part of the mystery of the practice process, is that we need to get to the point where we can indeed transcend that instrument, so that no one is noticing that we're playing the viola well. They're just hearing our music. And I think different people have a different route through that to get to that point. but ultimately, yeah, absolutely, that is our goal. How we make that.
How did it feel to you, Jasmine? I mean, how did it feel when you were playing?
I think it feels good. Not thinking about the instruments since we're doing so many things at one time, it can be pretty overwhelming. Um,
So maybe this is a key that maybe, I mean, we should think about it in the practice room, but when we leave the practice room, we have to practice in a way that we can not reproduce that in performance, and that we get a different set of values in performance where the instrument just becomes part of us, and we let it go and we let it happen that way.
Right. And I think sound is a great key for that. When you have sound as sort of what you're trying to hear, that I personally find that is a good thing to try to have in my mind as I'm starting anything.
Mm-hmm. This is good. This is a good path for you, Jasmine. It's a very good path. This is great, Daniel. Thank you. It's awesome.
Thank you, and thank you so much to both of your wonderful students for playing today. It was really Jasmine and hearing Christen before, really great. Real pleasure.
Thank you. I think if there's a little time, Carolyn, I mean, if there's anyone, no one's asking any questions out here. I don't know if there's anyone out there actually. If you have one, go for it. But I'm okay for a few minutes.
Or if you have a question, Jasmine, feel free.
okay.
Yeah, first I would love to give the floor to Jasmine to ask anything she would like before I jump in. So Jasmine, do you have any general questions?
I think when talking about approaching the Bach harmonically, that was really helpful. I guess my biggest question for that is, I guess like what's like the proper balance in between, like, remember, I mean, there is like a melody written but not really, like you said, what's the proper balance in between thinking strictly harmonically and then keeping the, like, what's written in mind on the page, without the melody getting lost.
Great question. And the answer is it's going to be that's partly where the interpretation lies. So that's in a way a question for you to decide for yourself eventually. I think that let me ask you the question back. How would you describe sort of the character of the melody of this prelude?
I think it sounds a little bit like the grieving process. It's a little bit solemn. It's a little bit, I guess, alone feeling with pretty strong emotions, but you don't really have, like when you are interacting with someone, I guess strongly emotionally, like sometimes we tend to project that onto the other person, but that's not here. So it's like a kind of by yourself dealing with pretty heavy.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. You gave me a more sophisticated answer than I was looking for.
Oh.
But it's a great answer. Let me ask you it this way: is this like an aria, like an operatic aria? I don't think so.
No. Oh no.
You're still there.
I can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Can you repeat what you said like 15 seconds ago?
Sure. So I don't think this is like an operatic aria, right?
Yeah.
You notice how the lines kind of wind up and down and start and stop? What kind of playing does that remind you of? What kind of playing, let's say? Is it like a concerto? Is it like a tune from a concerto? What I'm fishing for, I'll tell you. I feel like this has a very improvisational quality to it.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's like a written out improvisation. So, and that's a really difficult thing to capture. because improvisation by its nature is spontaneous, in the moment. It's not planned. So how do we make something sound like it is this exploration, this wandering? At the end of the day, I guess, as I say, I think the connection between the harmonies is very important. But I think if you go through that exercise of sort of paring it down to its basics, taking away the melody, I think it'll give you more of an idea of how you want to play it when you do add it back. It's like you may have heard before that the best way to practice vibrato is to practice without any vibrato, because then you find out where you really, really miss vibrato and where you absolutely have to have it. Similar thing, if you're playing just the harmonies, as if you were Bach, and you said, okay, I've come up with this bass line. I've come up with this great progression. So now what am I going to do with it? Well, and then pretend that these things, they're your attempt to connect them up. But in terms of where the balance lies, I think that's interpretation. And that's personal. And you know what? You might feel one day one way and differently another day. Hopefully, we're going to play this piece. You're going to play this piece for a long, long, long time. You don't want it frozen in you don't want it the same every time. You want it to feel like it's constantly, you're noticing different things and reacting differently to different parts of it. At the moment when you feel like this is how I play it and it's going to be this way tomorrow and it was this way yesterday, it's harder to find the excitement in playing it, I think.
Thank you.
That's great. There she is.
Oh, I'm always here. I'm always here. I don't have any audience submitted questions. I think everything you all said was beautiful. And Jasmine, thank you for asking that. When you voiced that question, I said, oh man, she dug deep for something very, very sophisticated and a very large scale idea for Bach. I feel like any question on Bach is, oh boy, because it's so many things. It's complicated, it's personal, the structure's so key, so many components. So beautiful question, Jasmine. Yes, Michael.
Carolyn knows because she's a cellist, a very good cellist.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Bach is a lifetime partnership. You'll work with him forever. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jasmine. And I know she's not here right now, but also bravi to Christen for her performance. And thank you so much, Michael and Daniel. Do you have any final thoughts before we close today?
Next year in the Berkshires.
It was really fun. Thank you guys for playing, and I hope I get to hear you in person one day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And great to see you, Mike.
Yeah, you too, Daniel. It's so great to catch up again.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to drop me a line, man.
Thanks. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks a
Oh,
lot,
my
Carolyn.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This evening at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are having an ornamentation and improvisation workshop. So this is actually a great linking bridge to some more talk about Baroque era music. And Jasmine is going to be performing again. She's getting her fill of Bach today. So she'll be there along with, we have a vocalist, a guitarist, and a cellist. So big variety, lots of variety coming for that class. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you again for a future presentation.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Bye.